They live beside us. We wave at them, borrow sugar, exchange smiles over fences. But what if the people next door aren't people at all? What if the quiet one has been watching you sleep, digging under your house, or worse, replacing you? In this chilling collection of 10 true neighbor horror stories, you'll hear unsettling tales of ordinary neighborhoods hiding dark secrets. From a sealed attic whispering your name to a mirror that doesn't reflect you anymore. These aren't just strange encounters, they're warnings. Lock your doors, pull the blinds, because tonight the horror lives right next door. When I moved into the Pine Ridge apartment complex, I was looking for quiet, a fresh start. I had just gone through a breakup that ended with me sleeping in my car for a week, and when I finally got enough cash together to land a lease, I jumped on the cheapest decent unit I could find. 3rd floor, end of the hall, plenty of light, no upstairs neighbors. I took it sight unseen. The leasing agent told me, "It's quiet, friendly neighbors, professionals mostly. You'll like it here." And for the first few days I did, until I realized something strange. The unit next to mine, 3B, was always dark. The blinds were drawn day and night. No lights visible through the curtains. I never heard a TV, no voices, no music. Just silence. And every night, at 2 a.m. on the dot, I'd hear it. Scraping. Not loud. Not constant. Just a slow, metallic sound. Like someone dragging a chair across hardwood. Sometimes it went on for 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. It never seemed aggressive. Just persistent. I thought maybe someone worked night shifts or had insomnia. I told myself not to overthink it. Then I had the first dream. In the dream, I was inside an unfamiliar apartment. The wallpaper was yellowed and peeling. The floor warped. The light buzzed overhead, dim and sickly green. A man sat in the corner, hunched over something. His back to me. He was carving. His fingers moved in slow, calculated strokes. As I stepped closer, I saw he wasn't carving wood. It was a piece of flesh. I saw his face, or what was left of it. A mass of jagged, torn skin, as if something had shredded it in straight lines. His eyes were hollow, lips twitching. He turned toward me and whispered one word. "Neighbor." I woke up gasping. I hadn't had nightmares in years, but that one stayed. Came again the next night. Same room, same man, closer. This time he whispered something different. "It watches." And the 3rd night, the knife remembers. Each time I woke up, drenched in sweat, breathing hard, with the distinct feeling that someone had been standing right beside my bed. I barely slept. My appetite vanished. And yet every night, 2 a.m., the scraping would start from 3B. One night, desperate for answers, I stayed up. I pulled a chair to the wall, pressed my ear against the cool drywall, and listened. Scrape, scrape, tap, and then a whisper, so faint I thought I imagined it. "Don't turn around." I froze. My back tingled. The room behind me felt different. I didn't move for minutes. Finally, I turned. Nothing was there. But from the other side of the wall, I swear I heard laughter. The next morning, I marched downstairs and knocked on the property manager's office door. A sleepy, half-bored guy named Darren opened it. I asked him about Unit 3B. "Oh yeah, that unit's technically occupied. Guy named Brian L. Henders. Pays rent automatically. I've never met him though. Might be a trust or something." I asked if anyone had entered the unit recently. "Nah, no complaints until now." I explained the sounds, the smell I thought I'd noticed the night before. Metallic, sweet, like old blood. Darren just shrugged. "Old building. You'd be surprised what seeps through." He wouldn't open the unit without a warrant or probable cause. So I bought a tiny spy cam and placed it in the hallway, facing 3B's door. That night, I stayed up watching the feed on my laptop. Midnight, nothing. 1 a.m., nothing. 2 a.m., the hallway light flickered, then dimmed. Then I saw it. A shadow moved across the wall in front of 3B's door, but there was no one visible. The shadow had no body. It just slid across the light, then paused at the door, right in front of the camera. And then, the footage glitched. The camera died. When I checked it the next morning, it was gone. Ripped clean off the wall. No footage. No explanation. I was terrified. That night, something changed. The scraping stopped. Instead, I heard 3 knocks on my wall. Soft. Deliberate. They came from the exact spot where my bed touched the wall connecting to 3B. I didn't move, but that night I dreamt again. This time, the man wasn't carving anymore. He was standing, right against the wall, facing me. He raised his hands and began tapping, exactly where my head would have been. I couldn't take it anymore. I told Darren I suspected a biohazard. Foul smells, possible death, maybe vermin or worse. I demanded a wellness check. He grumbled, but agreed to call maintenance and open the unit. I waited down the hall as the guy pried the lock. When the door opened, he immediately stepped back, hand over his mouth. Jesus! The hallway filled with a thick, coppery odor. They called the police. Inside Unit 3B, they found a body, slumped in a chair, skin shriveled, papery, hair thin, brittle, mummified. It was Brian L. Henders, the man the unit had been leased to, the name on the checks. He'd been dead for 7 years. The apartment had no lights, no electricity, no food, just walls every square inch carved. Names, symbols, repeated phrases. Don't turn around. It watches. The knife remembers. Some were fresh. Some were in my handwriting. That night I didn't sleep. I packed a bag, booked a hotel, but I made the mistake of lying down. Just for a minute, I dreamt again. Only this time I wasn't watching him. I was him. My fingers were carving the wall. My skin was split and peeling. I could feel him inside me. I woke up to find scratches on my nightstand, the same symbols carved into 3B, and a word I will never forget. Neighbor. When Daniel and I bought the house on Serenity Lane, it felt like a dream. A quiet street in upstate New York, tree-lined and tranquil. We'd been saving for years, hoping to leave the noise of the city behind. The house was modest but beautiful. 2 stories, a backyard with an apple tree, and a white picket fence straight out of a brochure. And then there were the neighbors. On our left, the Murdaughs. The realtor said they were quiet folks, keep to themselves. She said it like a compliment. We would learn otherwise. It started subtly. The Murdaughs never came outside. Their car stayed parked in the same spot. The curtains were always drawn. No mail, no trash cans, no deliveries. We never saw them come or go. But their lights would flicker on at strange hours. Quick bursts, like strobes, always at night. Daniel tried knocking once early on just to say hello. No answer. He swore he heard shuffling behind the door, but that was it. We assumed they were reclusive, or elderly, maybe sick. We were wrong. About 2 weeks after we moved in, I started hearing voices. Not from outside, from inside the house. More specifically, from the vents. It began in the guest bedroom. A soft murmur, like someone speaking in the next room. But the words were too faint to understand. Just a constant hush, like breath formed into sentences. When I mentioned it to Daniel, he thought it was just old pipes or bad insulation. Then it spread. First to the hallway, then the kitchen, then the bedroom, and then the words became clear. One night, As I lay in bed with Daniel snoring beside me, I heard it. In the walls, in the walls, in the walls. It repeated, soft, hoarse, like someone whispering through cracked lips. Couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room until dawn, lights blazing, staring at the vent by the TV. The next morning, Daniel helped me call an HVAC specialist. The man spent 2 hours checking every duct and grate. "Your system's sealed tight," he said. "No airflow from outside. Couldn't hear anything myself. Might just be thin walls." But I knew better. The voice was moving. Then came the cabinet. Daniel was rearranging our basement one afternoon when he moved an old metal shelving unit left behind by the previous owners. Behind it was a jagged hole in the drywall. Not round, not precise, torn, like something had clawed its way through. Behind the hole was darkness. A crawl space maybe 2 or 3 feet wide, running between the walls of our house and, presumably, the Murdochs. Dust clung to the edges. A cracked mirror leaned in one corner, and in the dust beneath it were bare footprints. Human. No shoes. No socks. Just feet. We called the police. An officer came and did a walkthrough. We showed him the vent, the hole, the crawl space. He looked mildly disturbed, but there wasn't much he could do. "No sign of forced entry," he said. "Could have been an old maintenance crawl. Still, I'll go knock next door." Daniel and I watched from our living room window as the officer stood at the Murdoch's door. He knocked. No answer. He leaned in, and then he stopped. He stood there for a solid 2 minutes, unmoving. Finally, he turned back to us and walked away, his face pale. "Someone's in there," he said. "But they wouldn't come to the door." I heard talking, but it didn't sound right. Like they were all speaking at once. Different rhythms. Like a recording on a loop. That night, I set up a motion camera in the hallway outside our bedroom. When I checked the footage the next morning, I found 67 clips. Most were empty, but one showed a hand, pale, thin, sliding slowly out of the vent in the wall. Another showed a shape crawling into the hallway, hugging the floor like a spider. The final clip was a blurred face inches from the lens. It grinned. Eyes too wide. Mouth too still. I showed Daniel. He deleted the footage. I printed one frame. We took it to the police. They came back with a warrant. The Murdoch house was unlocked. Inside, they found no residents. No furniture. But in the walls, behind the drywall, they found a network of tunnels. A passageway connected directly to the crawl space in our basement. Inside were blankets soiled and frayed, crushed soda cans and food wrappers, a stack of Polaroid photos. Each photo was of us, eating dinner, brushing our teeth, sleeping, all taken from inside our home. The tunnels were filled with drawings. On cardboard, torn wood, scraps of plastic. They showed crude human figures, all faceless, kneeling before a dark shape with antlers and no eyes. On one wall, written in what the report said was blood, "We live in the walls. We stay until we're invited to stay forever." We left the next day, moved 3 states over. Daniel still sleeps with the lights on. But a few weeks later, a package arrived at our new address. No return address. No postage. Inside was a single Polaroid. Me brushing my hair. Taken from behind me. In the mirror, a figure stood in the corner. Faceless. Smiling. After my grandmother passed away, I inherited her house in Dowrbridge, Vermont. It was old. A Victorian-style home at the edge of town. The kind with drafty floors and antique doorknobs that clicked too loudly at night. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, but I remembered the pine tree in the backyard, and the cuckoo clock that used to scare me every hour on the hour. I was 29, burned out. Inheriting a house seemed like a weird kind of blessing. I moved in 2 weeks after the funeral, and that's when I met Mrs. Whittle. She lived next door in a crooked yellow house that hadn't been painted in decades. The roof sagged. The shutters hung loose like they wanted to fall. Mrs. Whittle was in her 80s, bone-thin with a long neck and white hair that puffed out like dandelion seeds. She wore a cardigan even in the heat. I was bringing in groceries when she appeared at the property line. I didn't hear her walk up. "You're Henry's boy," she said. "His grandson," I replied. She stared at me for a moment, then said, dead serious, "She's not really gone, you know?" I forced a smile, thinking she meant it sentimentally. She didn't. From that day on, Mrs. Whittle watched me. Every morning, I'd glance toward her house and see her standing in her second-story window, behind the glass, eyes fixed directly at mine. Not sometimes. Every day. She didn't blink. She didn't wave. Just stared. Sometimes I'd see her at another window, the back one or the kitchen, always in the exact position, just still. I stopped looking, but I still felt her eyes on me. One night, I found a white envelope under my front door. No stamp, no name. Inside was a piece of paper in shaky cursive. "She's still in the house." I figured it was a prank. Maybe Mrs. Whittle, or some local trying to scare the city kid. But the next night, I found another envelope. "Don't trust the mirror in the upstairs bathroom." And then a third. "She won't let you leave." I confronted Mrs. Whittle the next morning. She didn't even open the screen door. Just said, "I didn't write them. She tells me what to say." Then she shut the door. While cleaning the attic, I found a locked door tucked behind a dusty armoire. It wasn't in the house's layout. The door had no handle, just a metal latch on the outside. Painted shut. I pried it open with a crowbar. Inside was a 6-foot room. Bare floors. No windows. The walls were scratched raw, as if someone had been clawing at them. In the corner was a rocking chair and a black and white photo of my grandmother pinned to the wall. Her eyes had been burned out. That night, I heard tapping from the hallway. I got out of bed and followed the sound. It was coming from the tall mirror near the stairs. An old gold-framed thing I'd always hated. Tap, tap, tap. When I leaned in, I saw something inside. Not my reflection, but her. My grandmother, staring back at me. Her face was slack. Her mouth hung open, as if trying to scream, but no sound came. Then she smiled, and my reflection returned. I stayed awake until sunrise. The next morning, I boarded up the mirror and locked the attic door. It didn't help. That night, I heard footsteps in the walls. Small at first, then faster, like something was running. My bedroom light flickered. The floor creaked. I heard a voice from the mirror. "You let her out." I went back to Mrs. Whittle, desperate. I asked her what was happening. She looked tired. "Your grandmother died up there," she said. "In that locked room." Her mind went first, then the rest. She stayed because no one came. She rotted in the walls until she didn't know she was dead. I asked why she was haunting me. "She remembers you," Mrs. Whittle whispered. "You were her favorite." She handed me one last envelope. Inside was a mirror shard. And a note. "You'll be next." That night, I packed my bags and left. I never sold the house. Never even went back for my things. But the dreams haven't stopped. In them, I walk the attic. The walls bleed. The mirror breathes. And she waits. Her face changes now. Starting to look like mine. When I first moved into my apartment in Cincinnati, I thought I'd finally caught a break. It was a renovated brownstone near the edge of the city. Exposed brick, big windows, rent that didn't choke me. I took Unit 2. Middle floor, decent light, creaky wood floors that felt like character rather than problems. The landlord was some guy named Tom who barely looked up from his clipboard when I signed the lease. Said only one other unit was occupied, the one below mine. Guy's lived here a long time, he said. Keeps to himself. I never saw the man, but I heard him. It started with footsteps. Not unusual. People walk. But these were different. They were rhythmic, pacing back and forth in the same section of floor, between midnight and 3 a.m. Then came the dragging. Something heavy, slow, like furniture being scraped across the floor. Or something worse. I banged on the floor once. The sound stopped, and then started again, louder. I left a polite note by his door the next morning, just asking for quiet during the night. No response. But the note was returned later, slipped under my door, soaked, like someone had dipped it in cold water. Soon after, my cat, Bixby, started acting strange. She refused to walk near the air vents, especially the one in the hallway. She'd crouch and hiss at it, then bolt, tail puffed like a bottle brush. One night, I found her scratching at the vent cover, growling. Her ears were flat, her claws bloody. I pulled her away and knelt down to check. And through the dark slats, I saw something blink. 2 eyes, staring directly back at me. I jumped back so hard I hit the wall. But when I looked again, they were gone. I texted the landlord. Unit 1 is creeping me out. I think someone's in my walls. He didn't reply. That night, I was brushing my teeth when I saw something in the bathroom mirror. Just for a second. A tall, pale figure standing behind me. Face half covered by shadows, hands twitching at its sides. I spun around. Nothing there. But my toothbrush had fallen into the sink, still vibrating from the impact. The next day, I knocked on Unit 1's door again. No answer. So I went to the building office. No manager. Just a pile of unopened mail on a desk. I checked the tenant records. Unit 1 had been rented under the same name since 1996. Same payment method. No maintenance requests. No complaints. Just silence. Later that week, I dropped my phone behind the couch. While reaching down, I noticed a loose plank in the floor. It looked like a panel, a hatch. I pried it open with a butter knife. Beneath was a narrow tunnel, carved crudely between floor joists and beams, running downward into the walls. At the bottom, I saw something glint. A piece of glass, maybe a mirror shard. Next to it, a tangle of hair. Human. I sealed it shut and pushed furniture over it. I didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I heard a soft knocking. But not at my door. Beneath me, it echoed up through the floorboards. 3 knocks. Then 2. Then 1. Pattern. Like a code. I didn't move. But when I woke up the next morning, my kitchen chairs were rearranged. Stacked in a pile. As if someone had watched where I walked and tried to block me in. I called the police. 2 officers came. They knocked on the door of Unit 1. No response. They called in backup and got permission to enter. They were inside for 15 minutes. When they came back up, one of them looked shaken. There's no one in that unit, he said. Hasn't been for a long time. I asked what they found. They didn't answer. But one muttered, "You should find somewhere else to stay." I didn't leave. I should have. Instead, I set up a camera, pointed it at the hatch in my floor. I let it record overnight. The next day, I reviewed the footage. At 2:46 a.m., the hatch opened. A hand emerged, long, pale, with cracked fingernails. Then another. And then a head, too thin, eyes too wide, skin gray like old paper. The figure dragged itself into my living room, crawled across the floor, stopped in front of the camera, and smiled. Then the feed cut out. When I got home that night, the camera was smashed. The furniture over the hatch was back in place. But the hatch itself was gone, replaced by new flooring. Identical color, seamless, like it had never been there. I called Tom, the landlord. He answered, "You opened it, didn't you?" I froze. "That unit doesn't have tenants," he said. It has visitors, and they don't like being disturbed. Then he hung up. I left the next morning. I didn't pack. I didn't tell anyone. I just drove. I found a new apartment in another city. Smaller, brighter, fewer floors. But last week something happened. I came home from work and found a single object in the center of my living room. A piece of torn paper. On it, written in tiny, perfect handwriting. The hatch opens from anywhere. And beneath it, a symbol. A circle, surrounded by scratched eyes. I flipped the paper over. The back was damp and smelled like soil. After the divorce, I wanted isolation. I left the city, bought a small off-grid cabin near the edge of the Adirondacks, and moved in with nothing but a truckload of essentials and a few boxes of books. No internet.
No neighbors.
At least that's what the realtor told me. The cabin sat at the bottom of a long incline. The land behind it rose into forest. Miles of dense pine sloped into fog most mornings. A single other structure stood on the hill above mine. A leaning wooden house with a rusted windmill creaking beside it. I assumed it was abandoned, until I met Elmer. I was chopping firewood when I first saw him. An old man, thin as a fence post, wearing a faded coat and wide-brimmed hat. He was standing at the edge of the tree line, uphill, watching me. He didn't move, didn't wave, just stared. Later that day, I found a tin of cookies on my porch. No note, just a small, leather-bound journal placed beside it. The first page read, "Welcome to Maple Ridge. You'll want to read this before the first knock." The entries were handwritten and dated back decades. At first, it read like a nature diary. Rainfall logs, soil observations, when the bears returned to the stream. Then, halfway through, the tone changed. The watcher came again tonight. Same place at the tree line. Didn't move. But when I blinked, it was closer. Another entry weeks later. He doesn't like the windmill. It's the only thing that makes him pause. And one more, dated years later. Never wave, never speak, and never answer the knock. If you hear it twice, it means you've already been claimed. I stopped reading after that. The next morning, Elmer came to the porch. He looked exactly like the figure I'd seen at the trees. Weathered skin, eyes like cracked granite. He handed me a cup of coffee and said, "The woods are watching. Don't be seen more than once." Then he walked away. He never came back. That night I heard it. A knock. The 3:12 a.m. Exactly. Just one. Sharp and hollow on the cabin door. I stayed frozen under the blanket, every light off. I didn't sleep. The next day, I hiked up to Elmer's house. But the place was empty. Dust thick on the shelves. Furniture draped. Dishes still in the sink. It looked like no one had lived there for years. Yet the cookies he gave me were still on my table, fresh. On the porch, I looked down the hill, toward my cabin. And there, standing at the edge of the forest near my home, was someone. A tall, unmoving silhouette in a wide-brimmed hat. Watching. The journal said, "Never look twice." But I did. And when I glanced back again, it was gone. That night I heard the knock again. This time 2 knocks. Slow. Measured. I sat in the dark, holding the old hunting rifle I hadn't yet loaded. The front door never opened. But in the mirror above the mantel, I saw something move behind me. When I turned, nothing. When I looked back at the mirror, it was black.
No reflection.
Just darkness. The knock didn't return the next night. But the windmill, Elmer's old rusted windmill, was spinning wildly in dead air. Spinning toward my cabin. As if pulled. I opened the journal again, shaking hands flipping through brittle pages. Near the back there was a drawing. A tall figure, no face, standing beside a door. Above it were words written in what looked like red pencil. "If you see him at dawn, It means you've let him in. I didn't understand. Until the next morning when I woke up and the door was unlatched. That day, I hiked deep into the woods. Miles, looking for anything, anyone. I found something worse. A second cabin. Identical to mine. Same layout. Same wood. But this one had been burned, half-rotted and blackened. Inside, the floor was still intact. In the corner, bones. A charred ribcage. A melted watch still clinging to a wrist. It was my brand. I checked my own wrist. My watch was gone. I ran home as the sun dipped below the trees. When I arrived, the windmill was still spinning. Inside my cabin, the fire had gone out. And on the wall above the fireplace was a fresh message, scratched into the wood. You've been watched. Now you watch. I packed what I could and left that night. I live in a city now. No trees. No hills. I sleep with all the lights on. But sometimes, just before 3:12 a.m., I hear creaking from the hallway. Once, I heard one knock on the wall near my bed. The next week, two. And last night, I found something new. On my nightstand beside my keys, a small leather-bound journal, with my name on the front. We moved to Hillside Circle in spring. My wife and I were expecting our first child. We wanted peace, a yard, something away from the noise and chaos of the city. Hillside was everything we hoped for. Quiet, clean, safe. Smiling neighbors, trimmed lawns, the whole cliché. The house we bought sat directly across from an older Victorian. 2 stories, sagging roof, peeling white paint, and one feature we couldn't ignore, a blood-red front door. It was the only splash of color on the entire street. I joked about it at first, but by the end of the first week, I stopped laughing. According to the neighbors, nobody lived there. At least not anymore. That place, said Greta, the elderly woman next door. It's been empty for years. Yet every night we saw light flickering from the attic window. Just for a few seconds. Between 2 and 3 a.m. We figured maybe squatters had taken up residence. Or maybe the power had never been shut off. But then the door creaked open one night. Only an inch. Then slowly shut again. Like it was testing something. The first time it really scared us was when our dog went missing. Murphy, a golden retriever who'd never run off before, vanished one afternoon. No digging, no bark, no broken gate. Just gone. That evening, I stood on the porch calling for him. That's when I saw the attic light turn on again. And in the window, a shadow. Someone watching me. They didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just stood there as the light flickered. I didn't tell my wife. But that night, I dreamt of a red door opening and Murphy whimpering from the other side. 2 days later, I found a box on our porch. No label. Inside was Murphy's collar, clean, no blood, no chew marks. Just placed neatly on a folded sheet of yellowed paper. On it, written in childlike handwriting. He wasn't yours. We went to the police. They searched the house across the street. No one was inside. But they found footprints, old, decayed, circling the red door on the inside, as if someone had walked around it in endless loops. They also found claw marks on the attic walls. Thin, deep, like something had tried to scratch its way out. That should have been enough. We should have left. But we didn't. Then one night, our daughter, just 5 years old, came into our room and said, "The man in the window says he lives here now." I asked what she meant. He knocked twice. That means he's coming. She'd been sleepwalking, or so I thought, until I saw the red door that night. It was wide open. I crossed the street with a flashlight and a bat. The door creaked as I stepped inside.
No furniture. No smell. No dust.
Just quiet. Too quiet. I made it to the attic. The room was filled with toys. Rotten stuffed animals. Dolls' missing eyes. A crib in the corner. Inside the crib was a mirror face down. I picked it up. In the reflection, I saw the room behind me, and someone standing there. A man with no face, just skin stretched where features should be. And he waved. I dropped the mirror and ran. When I got home, my daughter was standing at the window. She turned to me and said, "He followed you. You're his now." The next day, I went back to the Red Door house with a sledgehammer. I tried to break the door off its hinges, but every swing bounced, like it wasn't wood, like the door didn't want to break. I spray painted a giant X on it instead. That night, the X was gone, repainted white, except for a message written in blood-red strokes across the center. Doors open both ways. I didn't sleep. At 3:33 a.m., I heard 2 knocks. On our bedroom door. I opened it with a bat in hand. No one was there, but our hallway mirror had changed. Instead of reflecting our home, it now showed the attic across the street. And in that attic was our bedroom with us sleeping. I stared for minutes. Then the reflection blinked and smiled. We moved that morning. Sold the house to a flipper at a loss. Never looked back. But last week, I got a package in the mail. No address. No label. Inside was a small red door, no taller than a shoebox, with a working brass handle. I left it on the shelf. That night, my daughter woke me up. "Daddy," she whispered. "He's in my mirror again. He says your turn is next." I moved into the studio because it was supposed to be temporary. 3 months. Short-term contract in Chicago. Fully furnished sublet. Cheap. Convenient. No strings attached. The guy I rented from, Kyle, did everything through text. No call. No meeting. Just sent me a key code and said, "Don't worry. Just don't touch the mirror." At the time, I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. The apartment itself was basic. Sparse. 1 large room with a bed, kitchenette, and a weird smell of metal in the air. But right across from the bed, taking up nearly half the wall, was an ornate oval mirror. The frame was antique. Gold. Too elegant for the IKEA furniture around it. It stood on its own, leaned just slightly forward, like it was tipping toward the bed. The first night, I slept with my back to it. The second night, I threw a blanket over it. When I woke up, the blanket was folded on the floor. It got worse from there. On day 4, I got a message on the Buildings Group app. An anonymous post from someone named Leon, tagged to my unit number. It said, "Have you seen the man in the mirror yet?" I replied, confused. He answered, "Don't let him know you see him. He only appears once you notice." I went to knock on Leon's door. The manager said that unit's been vacant for 6 months. That night, I dreamed I was lying in bed, just like real life. Only this time I couldn't move. I could see the mirror across the room, dimly lit in the moonlight. A man stood inside it. Not reflected inside. Pale skin. Black suit. No eyes. He leaned close to the glass, pressing his hand against it, and smiled. When I woke up, my chest was tight. My jaw sore. I'd been grinding my teeth in my sleep. The mirror, the glass was fogged, like someone had been breathing against it from the other side. I set up a camera to record overnight. Just a phone, propped up on a stack of books. The next morning, I checked the footage. At 2:44 a.m., the recording glitched. When it recovered, my sleeping body was still in bed, but the mirror was black.
No reflection.
Just a dark void. Then a shape formed inside it, human-shaped, hunched. It leaned forward and whispered something. The camera didn't catch the sound, but I swear I saw myself twitch in bed, like I'd heard it. Then the shape vanished. I called Kyle. No answer. I texted, "This place is messed up. The mirror is doing something. I'm leaving." He replied, Don't break it. Whatever you do, do not break it. You'll just let him out. I asked who he was. Cal sent a photo. It was the mirror in a different room. Same mirror. Different location. Burn marks on the wall behind it. Claw marks on the floor. He wrote, "You're not the first." I packed to leave that night. Tried to open the door. It wouldn't budge. Deadbolt turned. Knob spun. But the door wouldn't open. I tried the windows. They were sealed. The walls felt closer. My phone battery drained in minutes. The only thing working was the mirror. It now reflected a different version of my apartment. One where the bed was empty and the figure stood alone. Waiting. I fell asleep by accident. Just a minute, I thought. I woke up in the mirror. Or something like it. The room was cold. Everything in reverse. My body still lay in bed, across the glass. And the man in the suit now stood next to it. Watching. Breathing. Then he turned. And looked at me. Trapped inside. He smiled. And lay down in my place. I screamed myself awake. But nothing felt real anymore. Everything in the apartment was too perfect. Symmetrical, pristine, untouched. Even the dust fell evenly. I stared into the mirror. And blinked. My reflection didn't. I ran that day. Kicked open the door. Left my things and never looked back. I moved home. Stayed with friends. Told no one. It was just a bad dream, I told myself. Stress. Insomnia. But last week, I received a box in the mail. No return address. Inside was an ornate gold-framed mirror, small this time. Handheld. And a note taped to the glass. Objects in mirror are no longer you. When my dad died, I left Chicago and moved back to my hometown in Kentucky to help my mother downsize. The plan was simple. Rent a house nearby for a few months, clean out the family home, sell it and go back to normal life. I found a listing outside Dalton Hollow, a little one-story ranch with a sloped backyard and a patch of woods behind it. Nothing fancy, but it was quiet. The only strange thing was the stone at the far end of the yard. A waist-high slab of rock standing perfectly upright, half sunken into the earth. Weathered, cracked, like a grave marker. The landlord, Mr. Baird, mentioned it casually when he handed me the keys. Don't worry about the stone. It's been there longer than the house. Kids used to call it haunted, but it's just old. Just leave it be. I should have asked more questions. I first noticed something strange on the third night. I was sitting on the back porch drinking coffee when I saw movement by the stone. A figure. Not close. Not clear. Just standing behind it, half hidden by trees. I blinked, and it was gone. I told myself it was my imagination. But the next night, the motion-activated light in the backyard flicked on. I looked out the window. Nothing was moving. But the stone had changed. It was cleaner. Almost like someone had recently brushed it off. The next day, I visited the neighbor next door, an older guy named Russ who'd lived there since the 80s. I asked him about the stone. His smile vanished. That thing should have been pulled years ago, he said. But Baird's afraid of it. Everyone is. Truth is, no one knows who or what is buried there. The property used to be part of a much bigger homestead. That stone's been there longer than roads. They say it's not a grave, he added. It's a seal. That night I heard digging. Somewhere outside. I stepped onto the back porch. Moonlight lit the yard. Everything was still, except the stone. It looked tilted, as if the ground beneath it had shifted. And around it, small, fresh piles of earth, as if something had been trying to claw upward. The next morning, I found a dead crow on the doorstep. Neck snapped. Eyes gone. Tied to its leg was a torn scrap of cloth. Old, sun-bleached, with words stitched in faded thread. He won't stay down. I called the sheriff. They sent a deputy who walked the yard, made a few polite noises, and told me to keep an eye out for wildlife. He wouldn't even approach the stone, just glanced at it like it might move if he stared too long. That night, I dreamt I was buried alive. I could feel earth pressing against my chest. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Above me, through the dirt, I saw a stone, and carved into it my name. When I woke up, my fingernails were dirty, like I'd been digging. Later that week, I found something buried near the back fence. A rusted box, filled with old Polaroids. Most were blurry, torn, but one was clear. It showed a man standing in the yard decades ago, maybe the 70s. He looked terrified, mouth open in mid-scream, pointing at something off camera. On the back was written, "Last tenant, 1974. Heard the knocking." That night I heard it too. Knock, knock, knock. 3 dull thuds, coming from beneath the floor. I pressed my ear to the wood. Came again, not angry, not rushed, just patient. I tried to leave the next day, but my car wouldn't start. Battery was fine, engine fine, gas tank full. I called a tow truck, but it never showed. I walked back up the porch and saw something on the doormat, a fresh clump of dirt, wet, red-tinted, and embedded in it, half-buried, a single human tooth. I went back to the stone that evening with a flashlight and a shovel. I was done being scared. I cleared the vines, brushed off the moss. There was something etched near the base, barely legible through time. For words, deep and jagged. "You let him out." The ground beneath me shifted. I dropped the flashlight, and from somewhere in the dark beneath my feet, something exhaled. I ran, packed a bag, slept in my car. At dawn, I found the stone split in half, a jagged crack right through the middle, and beneath it, the earth had sunken, like something had crawled out. A trail of disturbed dirt led from the base of the stone, right up to the back porch. I called Baird, told him I was leaving. He didn't argue, didn't even ask why, just said, "Seal must have cracked. That house has had 4 tenants in 40 years. You're the only one who made it out. Take your things, burn your clothes, and whatever you do, don't speak to it if it follows you." Then he hung up. I moved into an apartment 2 towns over. Small, boring, perfect. For a while, things were quiet. Then last week I got a package. No return address. Inside was a chunk of stone, gray, cracked, and written on it in fresh red ink, "Wake." I lived in the left side of a duplex for 2 years before they moved in. Quiet neighborhood, rent controlled. One neighbor, a retired schoolteacher, and empty woods across the back fence. My unit had creaky floors, stained walls, and heat that barely worked. But I didn't mind. The right unit had been vacant since I moved in. Dark windows, dusty mailbox. Then one Saturday in September they arrived. A man, a woman, and a little girl with brown curls and no expression. They smiled, waved, carried in boxes. Something about the way they moved made my skin crawl, like they weren't used to having bodies. They were quiet at first, too quiet, no music.
No te ves. No footsteps. No plumbing noises.
But late at night, I started hearing scraping through the shared wall. Not random, repetitive, like furniture being dragged in perfect intervals. Then came the tapping, soft, methodical. 3 taps at 2 a.m., 4 taps the next night. No patterns I could understand, only that it was getting closer. One afternoon, the little girl stood on the shared lawn and stared at my window for nearly 10 minutes. I waved awkwardly. She didn't respond. Finally, she said, "Do you know what happened to the last man who lived in your side?" I walked outside. "What did you say?" She smiled. "He went in the wall." They made sure he fit. Then she skipped away. I asked the landlord about the neighbors. He gave a vague answer. They're long-term, quiet, rent always paid on time. I asked about the previous tenant in my unit. He paused. Left in the middle of the night. Didn't take anything. Left a note that just said, "They were in my sleep." I began to notice small changes. My furniture was off by inches each morning. My closet light would flicker on by itself. One night, I woke to find all the cabinet doors open. No sign of forced entry. I started locking the bedroom door. The next morning, I found scratches on the inside of it. Small, deep, like someone had been dragging their fingernails across it all night. Then I found the screws. Dozens of them. Scattered neatly on the kitchen counter, all different lengths and types. I didn't know where they came from until I opened the hallway vent. The inside had been tampered with, unscrewed, loosened, bent inward, like someone was trying to crawl through. That weekend, I set up a camera in the hallway. Motion activated. The next morning, I had 42 clips. The first 30 were static. Then a frame showed the hallway dark, empty. Then a figure, too tall. Wrong proportions. Limbs bending the wrong way. Crawling out of the wall vent. It stood, looked straight at the camera, and smiled. The final clip was black. Then static. Then the video folder deleted itself. I confronted the neighbors. No answer. But I noticed something terrifying. They had mirrored everything in my home. Same porch chair. Same doormat. Even the same mailbox decal. Like they were trying to match me, one detail at a time. That night I nailed shut every vent, window, and door. I blocked the wall with furniture. I didn't sleep. At 3:33 a.m., I heard something slide. I ran to the kitchen. One of the dining chairs had moved. It now pointed toward the hallway. I turned around. The wall vent was open again. Fresh dirt on the floor. And sitting in it, a note, written in perfect block letters. Ready to switch now. I ran out the front door in my pajamas. I didn't stop until I reached a 24-hour diner 5 blocks away. When I came back the next morning with the cops, both units were empty.
No furniture. No trash.
No sign anyone had ever lived there. But in my unit, taped to the bathroom mirror, was a photo of me sleeping. Taken from inches away. I moved the next day. But 2 weeks later, I found something in my new apartment. A tiny hole behind the bathroom cabinet. Inside it, tucked into the wall, was another note. Subject 5. The walls are bigger here. After the divorce, I wanted to vanish. No more cities. No more people. No more noise. So I bought a small cabin in the woods of northern Montana. Off-grid, solar-powered, 3 miles from the nearest paved road. It was cheap, probably too cheap, but the idea of isolation was too perfect to pass up. The man who sold it to me just said, "If you hear knocking, don't answer the first time. Don't survive the second." I laughed at him. He didn't laugh back. The first few weeks were quiet, peaceful even. I chopped wood, read books, cooked over a fire, slept like the dead. Then, on the 7th night, I woke up at exactly 3:12 a.m. to a knock. Just one. Knock. Soft. Hollow. On the front door. I stayed still.
No footsteps. No voices.
No animals. Just one knock. And silence. The next night I stayed up. 3:12 came and went. Nothing. I told myself I'd imagined it. Until the 3rd night. Knock. Same time. I crept to the window. There was no one outside. But in the clearing just beyond the tree line, I saw something tall and thin, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat. He stood perfectly still, and waved. I didn't wave back. The next morning, I hiked toward where I'd seen him. Nothing but snow and pine needles.
No footprints.
No trail. Just a faint smell in the air, like burning pine and wet metal. That night, I found something on my porch, a handmade doll, woven from twine and moss. It looked like a stickman, head tilted, one arm missing. I burned it. That was mistake number 1. On the 11th night, I heard the knock again. But this time, 2 knocks. Knock! Knock! They echoed deeper. Not from the door, from the walls. I checked the cabin, flashlight in hand. Nothing. No tracks. No wind. But my reflection in the mirror? It was smiling when I wasn't. The next day, I hiked up the ridge. Found a second cabin. Rotten, collapsed in on itself. Inside was a skeleton curled into a corner, hugging its knees. A note was nailed to the wall. Waved back. Heard too. He wears your face now. I ran. Got back to my cabin as the sun set. The shadows looked longer than they should have. That night, the knocking came again. Knock! Knock! From both sides of the cabin this time. I locked everything. But at 3:33 a.m., the fire went out. The lights flickered, and the mirror by the sink shattered. Etched into the fogged glass were 4 words. You let him in. I packed to leave the next morning. Truck wouldn't start. The road was buried in snow that hadn't fallen. My footprints disappeared the second I looked away. That night, I saw movement inside the cabin. From outside. From the tree line. I was inside. But something else was too. I slept in the crawl space, clutching an axe. Didn't move. Didn't blink. At dawn, I crawled out and found the cabin rearranged. Furniture shifted. Books all turned to one page. Page 312. Twice he knocks. Once for hello. Twice to replace. If you hear a third, it's already done. That was last year. I don't live in the woods anymore. I moved to a city. Got a roommate. An upstairs neighbor. A locked front door with a peephole. I sleep light. And still some nights at 3:12 a.m., I hear, knock. I stay still. Then I hear, knock. And then, the third. I've lived in the same apartment for almost 4 years. It's on the bottom floor of a narrow brownstone in Pittsburgh. The kind of place where you hear everything. Plumbing, footsteps, ceiling groans. It's not much, but it's mine. Until last month, the unit above me was vacant. Renovation work had been stalled for months, and I'd grown used to the silence. Then someone moved in. Or rather, someone started walking up there. It began as late-night pacing. Soft steps across the ceiling. Slow. Even. I figured the landlord finally found a new tenant, but I never heard boxes being moved in.
No voices.
No door slams. Just footsteps. At first, it was comforting, proof that I wasn't alone in the building anymore. But then they started at 2 a.m. Every night. The same pattern. Left to right. Stop. Wait. Turn. Walk again. I joked to myself that maybe the new tenant was a sleepwalker, until I heard the dragging. One night, the footsteps were accompanied by a sound like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Not furniture. Something soft dragging. Like a body. I texted my landlord and asked who had moved in upstairs. He replied, nobody yet. Still under repair. I stood there reading the message, while the footsteps continued directly above me. I called the police. They did a walkthrough of the upstairs unit. The officer came back down and told me it was empty.
No furniture.
No power. Dust still covered the floors, undisturbed. He looked uneasy, though. Said he heard something too. Might be animals in the ceiling. I asked if he thought the animals wore boots. He didn't answer. I set up my phone to record audio overnight. The next morning, I played it back. At exactly 2:03 a.m., I heard footsteps, dragging, a pause, then whispering. Not words, just breath shaped like syllables. But one phrase came through, repeated 4 times. He's not new. He never left. He's not new. He never left. Then I started getting mail addressed to Unit 3C. But my building only had 2 floors. There was no Unit 3C. I called the landlord again. He checked the system and said there was no record of that number ever existing. The next day, another envelope came.
No stamp.
No name. Inside was a single photograph. A blurry black and white shot of a man standing in the 2nd floor window, staring down at the camera. His face was scratched out. Written on the back in shaking handwriting. He knows you know. That night, the footsteps got louder. They didn't stop at the ceiling. I heard creaking on the stairs. Then in the hallway. Then outside my door. 3 knocks. Then silence. I checked the peephole. Nothing. When I opened the door, a piece of old newspaper was on the floor. A headline from 1982. Tenant found dead in ceiling crawlspace. Identity unknown. I searched public records. That article was real. The man had been living between units, crawling through the air vents, watching tenants for years. He died of dehydration, wedged in a duct. The building was evacuated and remodeled, but not cleared. There was never an obituary. No name. He'd had no ID.
No fingerprints.
They called him the Watcher in 3C. The next night, I didn't hear footsteps. I heard breathing. Inside my closet. I opened it slowly. Empty. Except for my mirror, which had fogged over. And in the center was a handprint. Pressed from the inside. I moved out the next morning. Left half my stuff behind. Didn't care. Found a new apartment across town.
No upstairs neighbors. No crawl spaces.
No Unit 3C. But last night, I heard footsteps again. Above my ceiling. And this time, I live on the top floor. When I moved into the house on Maple Drive, the neighbors didn't say much. Except for one phrase they all seemed to repeat. That place remembers. I laughed it off at first. I had just closed on my first real home. An old craftsman tucked under an enormous sycamore. The paint was faded, but the bones were good. It was quiet, secluded, exactly what I needed after a messy breakup and a year of couch hopping. The seller was oddly eager to get rid of it. Gave it to me under market. Threw in the old furniture too. Just take care of it, he said. The house hates being empty. I thought he was being poetic. He wasn't. The first few days were normal. Then little things began to change. A door that I could swear I'd closed would be wide open when I returned from a walk. Lights that I never turned on flicked on by themselves. A hallway mirror I had covered with a sheet would always be uncovered the next morning, even after I nailed the corners down. I thought I was just exhausted. But then I found the drawings. They were on the inside of the kitchen cabinet doors, hidden from view unless opened. Childish sketches, stick figures, all labeled Mom, Me, and It. In one drawing, it was standing over me while Mom cried from the corner. Another showed it watching from the ceiling while the child slept. In the final one, the child was crossed out. Me, X'd in red crayon, and below it scribbled, "The house knows." I started digging into the property's history. It wasn't easy. No public record of deaths. But a local librarian helped me find archived clippings. In 1975, a woman had gone missing from the home. In 1986, a family fled in the middle of the night, claiming the house talked. In 2003, a child had run away from foster care. Last seen playing on the front porch of my address. The last line in the article chilled me. He told police he didn't live there. He said the house lived in him. After that, I couldn't sleep. Every creak made my skin crawl. I started hearing footsteps above me, even though there was no second floor. I went up to the attic. It was empty, except for dust and a cracked trunk in the corner. Inside were old journals. One entry, dated 1961, read, "The house is learning. I told it my secrets. It gave them back wrong." Another, "It doesn't want a family. It wants a copy." And then the last one, "If you're reading this, it's already watching you too." I tried leaving. I packed a bag and drove to a friend's house across town. The second I walked in her door, my phone buzzed. A notification from my home security app. Motion detected. Hallway mirror. There was no one supposed to be in the house. I checked the feed. The mirror showed me, standing in the hallway. But I wasn't there. And the version of me in the feed turned toward the camera and smiled. I drove back, furious, convinced someone had broken in. The door was locked. Nothing disturbed. Except for one thing. The hallway mirror was now facing the opposite direction. Its reflection showed my back, even when I stood in front of it. And the mirror version of me? It blinked at the wrong times, like it was watching me. That night, I slept on the porch. Around 3 a.m., the porch light flickered on. The door creaked open on its own, and I heard a voice whisper from inside, "Come back. You forgot your face." The next morning, I smashed every mirror in the house. I nailed the cabinets shut, pulled the power main, tried to erase everything that could reflect. But the house remembered. On the wall behind the bathroom sink, scrawled in dust and faint blood, "We keep what we copy." I moved out the next day. Didn't even sell it. Just walked away. Rented a studio across town.
No mirrors.
No photos. I thought I was safe. Until last week. I woke up in the middle of the night. And on the bathroom wall, written in fog, "We remember you." And in the mirror, one I never installed, stood the house behind me. Waiting. When I signed the lease on apartment 5B, the manager told me, "Everything's included, even the utilities. Just don't use the back room." I thought she meant it was for storage. Maybe a maintenance closet. It didn't even appear on the floor plan. But on my first night, I found it. The door was flush with the wall at the end of the hallway. No knob, no markings, just paint a shade darker than the rest. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking for it. But I was putting away boxes when I heard a click. Turned around. The door was slightly open. No sound. No draft. Just a narrow gap leading into darkness. I opened it all the way. The room was small. Bare. No windows. One flickering bulb overhead. And in the center, a chair. An old wooden one. The kind you'd find in an abandoned school. Facing the wall. First I laughed. Took a photo. Sent it to a friend. Guess this is where the ghosts sit. That night, I dreamt someone was sitting there, whispering my name. I told the manager the next day. She looked at me a little too long before saying, "Just leave that room alone. It remembers people." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I tried keeping the door shut, even pushed a shelf in front of it. Didn't matter. Every morning it would be open again. And the chair? It would face a different wall each time, like it was slowly turning to watch me. I stopped sleeping well. Kept waking up at 3:33 a.m. Every time, I'd hear a soft creaking, like wood shifting. Then a whisper, faint, like a breath sliding along the baseboards. One night I recorded it. When I played it back, I heard my own voice whispering, "Let me in." I checked the building's history. Apartment 5B used to be 5B and 5C. Years ago there was a fire. The layout changed. No one mentioned that in the lease. I asked the landlord again. She said, there were complaints. Tenants said the room made them feel duplicated. I didn't understand. Then I saw the photo. It was one I had taken of the room on day one with the chair. But now the photo was different. There was a person sitting in the chair. Gray. Faceless. Hands folded. Head tilted toward the camera. The timestamp hadn't changed. Only the content. I deleted the photo. Threw out the chair. 2 days later it was back. In the same spot. Facing the bedroom. I started hearing footsteps when I showered. Soft, barefoot pacing just outside the curtain. I'd whip it open, no one there. But the mirror would be fogged, with a message drawn inside. You already let me in. I tried sleeping at a friend's place. Didn't matter. The second night there, I woke up at 3:33 a.m. and found a chair in the corner of her guest room. Same one. Same direction. When I blinked, it was closer. I went back to the apartment, packed everything, and told the landlord I was breaking the lease. She didn't argue, just said, "Most people only make it a month. You lasted 6 weeks." Then she handed me a mirror. Oval. Cracked. Wrapped in cloth. "Take this with you. If it shows 2 of you, run." I left it behind. Now I'm somewhere else. A new city. New building. No secret rooms. But sometimes, I wake up to find a chair in the hallway. Sometimes my phone shows photos I never took. And sometimes in the corner of my eye, I see me, watching, smiling, waiting for the door to open again. I'd only lived in the building for 3 days when I received the envelope. No name, no return address. Just slid under my apartment door sometime between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. Inside was a single item, a key, small, brass, old-fashioned, taped to a folded piece of paper that read, "Apartment 1D. When it starts knocking, let it in. Just not more than once. I live in 2B. There is no 1D in this building." The next morning, I checked with the landlord. He frowned and said, "Nope. Just A, B, and C units per floor." But the building was old. Basement levels. Sealed doors. I walked down the back stairwell. And there it was. A door labeled 1D, painted the same color as the wall. No handle. No frame. Just there. Like it had always been there, but hidden on purpose. The key from the envelope? It fit into a small slot where no keyhole should have existed. I didn't turn it. I backed away. Something behind that door breathed. That night, the knocking started. 2:12 a.m. 3 soft knocks. I sat up in bed. Listened. Then it came again from beneath the floorboards. I crept to the hallway. The air felt heavier near the stairwell, warmer, like breath on the back of the neck. I didn't open the door. The knocking stopped. The next day, I found a new envelope under my door. Inside, a note. "You did good. Most open on the first night. It remembers them. No key this time." But that night, I dreamed I was in a hallway of doors, all labeled 1D, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. And from behind one, I heard my own voice whisper, "Let me in." A week passed. No more knocks. Until I ran into an old tenant in the laundry room, a guy in his 50s who lived on the 3rd floor. I asked him about 1D. He dropped his detergent and just stared at me. "That's not for you," he said. "If you didn't open it, don't ever speak to it again." I asked what happened if someone did. He looked at me, dead serious. "You'll hear your name from the other side. And when you answer, you'll hear it twice." That night I stayed up. No knocking. But around 3 a.m. the power flickered. My hallway light surged, then went out. And from the stairwell, I heard it. Not knocks. My voice, calling softly. "Hey, can you let me in?" Then again, louder. "Hey, I know you're up." But I never said a word. The next morning, I checked the stairwell. The door labeled 1D, it was open. Not swung, just cracked slightly. enough to see inside. Only darkness, deep, cold, and breathing. I shut it, fast, locked it, wedged a broom against the frame. That night, I received a final envelope. Inside was a Polaroid, black and white, faded. It showed a man standing in the doorway to 1D half-shadowed. The date, 1979. On the back it said, "He let it in." It kept his voice. I taped the key to the wall inside my closet and moved 2 weeks later. New city, new building, top floor, no basement. But sometimes, when I walk past vents or closets, I swear I hear my voice calling, not echoing, mimicking, and every so often, a letter arrives. No address, just a key. And a note. You moved, but it has your name now. When I moved into apartment D, the leasing agent told me not to worry about the woman next door. She's quiet, keeps to herself, lived here a long time. She didn't say anything about her eyes. The first time I saw the woman in apartment E, she was standing in her doorway. Not coming or going, just standing there. Still, perfectly still. Her long gray dress brushed the floor. Her hands hung limply at her sides, and her eyes were wide open, unblinking. I smiled. She didn't move. I said hello. Nothing. She just watched me walk inside. I figured she was just odd. Maybe on the spectrum. Maybe blind. Who knows? But that night, I had a dream I was in the hallway, standing outside her door. Except it wasn't a door anymore. Just a black rectangle pulsing like a slow heartbeat. And inside, I saw her, standing in the same place, eyes wide, still watching. Over the next week, I'd see her in that doorway. Same spot, same pose, always facing forward, always watching. Never once did I see her open the door or step outside. One night, I heard movement in the hallway. Slow, shuffling steps. I looked through the peephole. She was standing outside my door now. Not knocking, not turning, just standing. Eyes open. I called the leasing office. Asked about her. The woman on the phone paused. Then said, "Apartment E?" I confirmed. "That unit's been vacant since December." I told her I saw someone in there every night. She said, "I'll send someone to check." No one ever came. But the next day, taped to my door, was a note. Do not open your door if she knocks. Do not speak to her if she knows your name. Do not let her inside. Asterisk asterisk. There was no signature. That night, I stayed awake. At 2:11 a.m. I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, fragile, like bone against wood. I checked the peephole. She was there. Head slightly tilted. Eyes wide. Still unblinking. Then she said, through the door, "I know your name now." I didn't sleep. When dawn broke, I went to check apartment E. The number on the door had been scratched off. The wood around it warped, like it had been burned from the inside. I tried the knob. Locked, but I pressed my ear to the door, and I heard breathing. Too close, like someone was standing on the other side with their mouth right against the wood. I stepped back, and from under the door, a single fingernail slid out across the floor, then slowly retracted. I moved out the next day. Didn't pack, didn't clean, just left. The building manager didn't even ask why. He just said, "She doesn't follow far. But don't give her a name if she finds you again." Now I live 3 towns over. No neighbors, no shared walls, no hallways. But last night, I looked through my peephole, and she was there, still standing, still watching, still not blinking. And this time, she smiled.